These conferences and the actions they are inspiring aren't just part of the 5-year plan. They are a springboard into the next chapter of Baha'i history. The first mention of Baha'u'llah in the West was made at the Columbian World Exposition held in Chicago in 1893. Up to that point, there were no Baha'is in the United States. But within a few years, scores of believers sprung up in Chicago and in nearby southern Wisconsin. As communities grew in the heart of the country, Abdu'l-Baha prompted these new believers to travel and sometimes pick up and move to help grow the faith. John Wilcott of Racine, Wisconsin, heeded that call. In 1910, he hopped a train and moved to Montana. He brought his mother along. Together, they embodied the rich pioneering spirit of the American Baha'i community. Some say adventure was in his blood. His great-uncle was a member of the Lewis and Clark expedition, and rumor has it he traced his ancestry back to Napoleon. Once he reached Montana, Wilcott created a life that would help him relate to those around him. He and his mother pitched a canvas wall tent in the middle of the open prairie, and it soon became known as a house of God for miles around. Today, the Baha'is of Montana often recount Wilcott's story for inspiration.
Yeah, that's November 23rd of 1910 is when it was published.
This whole story written by John Wilcott is just precious. I don't know what part you'd want to leave out. It's written to the Baha'i News, Dear servants of Abdu'l-Baha, I know you will be pleased to hear from this part of the West.
Although the work of giving the message is rather slow, we allow no opportunity to pass. Mother and I are the only Baha'is around here that we know of. We've had only cowboys and shepherds and a few ranchers to talk to. I have a full cowboy suit, and I am out with the boys and seem to be as tough as they are, so not to be a tenderfoot. At first, some of them did not want to hear anything of God, said there was no God. But after some of the great hidden mysteries were explained to them, they became interested. And you would be surprised to see us sitting on a log outside the tent until 10 o'clock at night. We send all our Baha'i love and ask your earnest prayers.
Your servant in his name, John H. Wilcott.
That's how we do it in Montana. We cowboy up. Exactly.
In their regional conference, the Baha'is of Billings, Montana began to feel that old pioneering spirit come alive in them.
My strongest image that I remember from the Portland conference was of the map of all the expected A clusters in our northwest region. And there was this big cluster of red stars showing all of the A clusters along the Oregon coast and the Washington coast. And then there was a good grouping down in Colorado, and there was a few in Utah, and then there was this few here and there, kind of but near each other. And then there was this one big red star in Billings, Montana, which if you plotted it from any other point was about as far away from any other point as you could get on that map. And it was just surrounded by a sea of nothing. And I thought, well, I mean, how fitting. Here I have to go back now and be like one of these explorers to not just grow Billings, that wasn't the point. The point was we have to grow Billings so that we're big enough to fill the rest of this map.
Just the request of how many people would be willing to go pioneer. And a bunch of people stood up and there was applause. And then the second one, how many people would be willing to pioneer to another cluster to help? And then a bunch more people stood up and then, how many of you would be willing to pioneer in your own neighborhoods? And it just made it such a simple thing that everybody realized they could stand up and try to do that.
The Billings Yellowstone area is a bee cluster. There are 90 Baha'is in the area, and they've been holding devotional gatherings and study circles for some time. However, these activities are mainly attended by longtime Baha'is. Their challenge now is to engage more people in the community building process.
Our area teaching committee had just been formed just before the conference, but we hadn't met, so as soon as we came back, we just met and realized this is the time to start putting this into place, and everything fell into place pretty quickly. You all hit 18, 19 houses, something like that, and if you all start on a different block, you won't all be kind of running into each other, tripping over each other.
A month after the conference, the Baha'is of Billings were venturing into new territory. For the first time anyone in town could remember, they would be knocking on doors and inviting people they didn't even know to learn more about the Baha'i faith.
When we talked about this direct teaching and specifically heard about this door-to-door campaigns, a lot of us had gotten into our heads that we didn't do that thing as Baha'is, and there's lots of examples of doing that aren't pleasant. So that's taken a big mindset for us. But it's from that call from the House of Justice to deliberately go do these things. And part of that pioneering in your own neighborhood is to move through that discomfort and say, this is not something that I would do on my own. But to just go for it and focus our energies on how to be just gracious and courteous and not pushing stuff. But it's asking a question, what do you know about the Baha'i faith, and would you be interested in hearing about it?
Community members moved past their hesitations and hit the streets. At the end of the day, spirits were high.
My team visited about 18 homes and knocked on the doors, and most people didn't answer the door, but about 6 people answered the door. And of those 6, one person showed some interest, and we talked to her a little bit.
This morning, I think we knocked on about 18 houses, and several people weren't home. As some people very politely let us know they weren't interested. However, we have 3 families or 3 households that want us to stop back either later today or tomorrow. I thought it was very interesting that they even opened the door.
We've been talking about action here in the state for a long, long time, and today it happened. And so it's a very exciting time. We went out and knocked on doors. Everybody made it back okay. We survived, and we actually had some really good fun with it. And so for me, it's that, yeah, we can do this, and we can do it again and again.
The organizers of Billings' door-to-door campaign see unity of action as key to their success. In their plan, everyone can play a role, whether on a teaching team, prayer team, cooking team, or babysitting team.
This was intimidating to lots of people at first, but as soon as we laid out the different parts of it, everybody realized, oh, I can do that part, and I can do that part, and I think it made it pretty palatable.
It just feels really good, like all those little pieces added up today.
You know, we always talk about how isolated we are here in Montana, but today I didn't feel isolated at all, that we do have a community, and it may be small, but we were all here, we were together, and it worked. We have people out in this neighborhood that are interested and want us to come back, and we didn't know that a few hours ago.
That spirit of participation is primed to continue after this weekend campaign. When it comes to following up and providing study circles and children's classes for interested neighbors, many people have pledged to pitch in.
Everybody said, you know, maybe I can do one study circle a week. I mean, it's not intense. It's something we can all manage. But when we're all doing that for the same neighborhood at the same time, it's actually a pretty significant impact.
Like John Wolcott, you know, Abdu'l-Baha said, go, and he went. He cowboyed up, and he came here. And that's all you have to do is cowboy up.